really? So where is she? All right, I'll find you. You can't hide. I'm also looking for... No. Yeah. All right, is there another man in here wearing plaid? I see you. Is there another man in here wearing like a checkered plaid? I thought it maybe it's just in the worship. I thought it was more checkered. Well, not you. Yeah. You came with me. No. Yeah, it was a plaid. I think it may be you. Do you play chess? Good. Then this is really for you. I actually didn't want you to play chess. I'm hoping it wasn't that you didn't play, because I feel like you're a piece on the board in God's hand, and you are strategically being used right now. And I don't know what it is you do. I don't know who you are, but I feel like God has actually got his hands on you. See, when you play chess, you'll move a piece, and then you take your hands off, because once you take your hand off the piece, you're no longer allowed to move that piece. And I feel like God's got his fingers on you, and he is strategically using you right now. And I think you're in a time and a season where you're probably coming into more of your destiny, seasonal destiny. And I say that because once we actually step into the fulfillment of what he's calling us to, he usually reveals that it was a step, not an ending point. But I think you're in a seasonal place of destiny right now, and I think that you're actually being more strategically used than you realize. And yeah, are you going to be here the whole weekend? Sunday? Okay, good. All right. Well, God bless you. Yeah. Wife? Okay, you're the queen, just so you know. All right, I don't see her, but if I see her later, I'll come. Okay, so we're set up for a prophetic weekend, and a lot of times we do a lot of prophetic training. We'll do some of that tomorrow, I think. We'll see what God does. But I really felt like praying today in my room a little bit longer, and I had notes on a message, and that message is now gone. And 20 minutes before I was supposed to come over here, those of you that were here last time, you heard some of these fun stories. Those that are from Austin know I don't have notes a lot of times, and they're more relative than followed along. But God gave me 4.5 pages of notes 20 minutes before walking in here. I don't know what that means. I'm not used to that. So I'm going to see what he's doing. You guys okay with that? I'm gonna warn you. I'm interactive, so if you're not, I might help you participate. I've been known to call people out. I've been known to go pick people out. I might even bring somebody up here on the microphone. Who's terrified? Yeah, you're like, if I say I'm scared, he'll grab me. If I don't say I'm scared, he'll grab me. You know, praying into this weekend, when I first started talking to Art, she's gone. Well, there she goes. First started talking to Artie about coming back. It filled my heart. Like, there's something special here. But I immediately, as I was praying into it, I felt a very clear, almost phrase that I've been praying in and around since for the last 5-6 weeks. And it was, when we were here last time, we came out of something. But this weekend, we're going into something. And I felt there was something so significant and intentional about what God's doing that you're moving into something very intentional, specific, and blessed by God in this season. And I don't want to move from something because of lack or because of a negative thing. See, a lot of times we move because things get hard. We move because things are bad. We move because it feels like, well, this isn't good anymore. And I want to move towards something because it's the goodness of God and his promises I'm stepping into. See, when we put our perspective on a problem, that's what we actually focus on. It's what grows in our life. And sometimes when we move to escape a problem, we step into a problem. Because we're not actually stepping towards something like the goodness of God. We're stepping away from something that's seemingly bad. All of this is to set up, I feel, what God's going to do this weekend. Tomorrow, I can tell you right now, I have no idea what's going to happen. I have zero plans. I have zero preparation for the rest of this weekend. I knew that when I got here, God would show me what's going to happen. Our lives need to be based on spirit and truth. Everybody understand that? If you don't, it's in your Bible. A lot of things I'm going to say are in the Bible. Some of them aren't. You can ignore those. But we need to be walking in spirit and truth. Spirit is the presence of God. Truth is the Word of God. We need to have both. You will find a lot of Christians that are so heavy in the Word and have never touched the Spirit of God, and it's fruitless, and it actually becomes religious and judgmental. You can find people that are so wrapped up in the Spirit of God that they don't go to the Word to confirm what they're experiencing, and they get way off on some weird things, and they actually lead people astray. To me, they're more dangerous than people that aren't saved. Because it's not wrong, it's a version of what's right. And that's scary. You need the balance of spirit and truth to actually walk out the fulfillment of God's call in your life. And if you're not feeding on the Word, don't expect it to come out of you when you need it. If you're not pursuing His presence, don't expect to understand His nearness or His peace. How many of you know what this is? See, I'm looking for participation. 3 people know what this is. I said I was going to do participation. What is this? It's my Bible. But what is this? It's the Word of God. This is the clearest prophetic voice you'll ever hear. Now, does that mean anything that isn't "thus saith the Lord" out of the Word is not prophetic? No, but it means that it's judged and held by this. And when I read my Bible, I don't know about your version, but when I read my Bible, it says that I'm supposed to bring heaven to earth. Not I'm supposed to pray for heaven to come to earth. I'm supposed to bring heaven to earth. I should actually be a representation of heaven on earth. When the world looks at me, they should think, "What are you?" Which happens a lot. But they should be looking at me thinking, "Why is your life, why is everything around you different?" Not better, not free from drama or pain, not special, but it looks different than what everything else looks like in the world. And they should see something. And I think the greatest evangelistic tool you have is your life, not your words. Because I can walk up to anyone and try to sell them a sales pitch on a God that I know is true. But when somebody comes and says, "What is it about your life that's different?" I don't have to sell anything. I did an experiment with my young adult group years back and teaching them on just evangelism. And I said, when you go out with the intention of leading somebody to the Lord as a reward, you will not be received well. But when you go out with the love of God in your heart to demonstrate what heaven looks like on earth, people will be drawn to you. And I said, let's do an experiment. I gave a whole bunch of people a bunch of red roses. And I said, I just want you to walk and go, "Here you go." And we watched. And people were like, "I don't have any money. I don't want that." It was like 80% of the people wouldn't take the rose because they're like, "What's the catch? What do you want for that?" And I was telling them, the the Word of God and who God is beautiful. It's like a rose. If you can give it away freely, but if you try to give it to somebody, they're going to question what's your motive. Then we had another person sitting there with a bunch of roses, and he was smelling them. He's like, and it said free on a bucket, and he's like, oh, these are so beautiful. And all he did is enjoy the rose. People walking by were like, are those really free? Yeah, thanks. And they asked for them because they saw them enjoying what they had instead of being offered something, because that puts a guard up. Because how many of you know there's a lot of religions out there? A lot of religions. And I mean a lot of Christian religions, let alone a lot of religions. And if you measure the rules up to them, ours is pretty strict and doesn't sound as fun. But the rules of religion are actually the pleasures of relationship. So once you're in relationship with God, they no longer become rules. They become the pleasure of your relationship with God. So if you are enjoying His presence and demonstrating the beauty of what a rose holds, people will ask if they can have one. But if you walk up and put it in their face, they're going to be like, wait, what's the cost? Why? That's not in my notes. That was a side trail. There are a lot of rabbits here. I remember this from last time. You guys have a ton of rabbits because I had to chase a lot of them last time I was here. And they're right around here. Like, it's weird. So what does heaven look like? If we're supposed to demonstrate heaven on earth, what does heaven look like? And I'm asking you this because I want you to measure this up. Is this what your life looks like? Right now, no one is bored in heaven. Looking around the room, I think a few of you aren't representing that. Some of you look very bored. In heaven, no one's looking at their phone. No one's waiting to go eat. No one is looking for entertainment. No one's actually looking for significance. Right now in heaven, everyone is stunned by the glory of Jesus. They're dumbfounded by His beauty. They're just in awe. And a response that is not scripted, it's just the natural responses that they drop down and worship His glory over and over. And it doesn't feel repetitive. It doesn't feel boring. It doesn't feel like, oh, are we doing this again? It's the response of the glory of God to just drop down and worship over and over and constantly. See, in our minds, we think, oh, we're going to do that forever? Wow, I can barely do anything 5 times in a row and not be bored. And that's what we're going to do for eternity. It's because His glory is so amazing. That's what heaven's like right now. When people walk up to you in any aspect of your life, is that what they're experiencing? This isn't meant to be bad for you guys. Just a question. Matthew 6, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. I love this quote by Jonathan Edwards. Lord, stamp eternity on my eyeballs. If you're more aware of today and what's going on in front of you than you are of eternity, you're looking from an earth mindset, not a heaven mindset. Do you understand that you are co-citizens of 2 worlds? You are right now sitting in your chair. And if you're not sure, just look down. But you are also sitting in heavenly places right now. And we are constantly in this tension of realizing, what are we more aware of? What world am I more aware of? Where am I thinking, feeling, speaking from? See, the prophetic is actually stepping into the awareness of your seat in heaven and speaking from that place. Worry is a heaven-removed mindset. When you lean into things that don't reflect the Spirit of God, the spiritual gifts, the spiritual fruits, you're more aware of this realm than you are of that realm. We have to have a heaven-to-earth mindset. How are we going to resemble something that we're not aware of? If you're not aware of your heavenly seat, how can you duplicate that here on earth? You guys okay? If you're not, I'm okay. The Lord wants to bring us into a place of personal intimacy through breakthrough. And I even believe tonight. I've been saved 23 years now. 24 years now. 24 years now. And the moment I actually said yes, fully said yes to God, I became a full-time minister. I was not working for the church because every one of you is a full-time minister. Because your old life is gone, your new life is born again, and you have the fullness of the Creator inside of you. You are a full-time minister. And I remember just the way God does things with me. He has to be extreme. I made a commitment, moved 8 hours, because I made a commitment, and for 3 weeks, something inside here changed and nothing outside here changed. Because I was so ingrained in my community and my world that I couldn't break out of it. But in here, it was like, I'm not fulfilled anymore, but I just don't know what else to do. So I decided to move. I figured, okay, if I leave, that'll help. So I moved 8 hours away. Got out of the car 8 hours away, and I was a completely different person. Didn't have this major encounter. No angels showed up that I'm aware of. I mean, it wasn't one of those, I've got this amazing testimony. No, I just got out of the car, and I was different. And the Saturday I moved up to where I moved, the next Sunday morning, I was teaching Sunday school to a bunch of homeless kids. And I remember opening up the stuff and reading through it going, this is amazing. The kids are like, yeah, did we get our lunch yet? And I'm like, I'm reading these kids' books thinking it was the best thing in the world. And I started working for the pastor, who was a painter, who listened to Christian talk radio. And he was an evangelist by heart. So 6 days a week, 8 to 10 hours a day, we painted. I listened to Christian talk radio, heard him preach to every person that walked by. He did less painting than I did, and he was the boss. And then I'd go to church on Sunday and serve in this homeless ministry. And I did that for 3 months straight. 7 days a week. It was God, 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 God. I got really bored. Because I didn't do anything with it. And I learned later on, I began to reflect back, I had a bunch of water that was becoming stagnant because it wasn't doing anything inside. And so I decided to go find another church just because I needed I needed to live. And it just worked to where I transitioned jobs, went to another church, met my wife at this church, best church in the world. Met my wife there and began to see God do something. But I was so active in the church, I was probably at the church 20 to 30 hours a week. Full-time job, newly married, starting a family, 20 to 30 hours a week at the church. Because it just seemed normal. It's like, I want to do things with God. I was doing them at work, doing them at church. But I would go to church services. How many of you have been to enough church services where you've heard, tonight you're going to have the breakthrough of your life? How many of you have ever heard that? 17 of you this time. I'm going to get all of your hands up at one point, I promise. Even if I have to pull out a gun. Man, you guys are a tough crowd. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Packing. I put my knife in my pocket. I was like, oh. Maybe I can hide it in my luggage. I literally tried to think how I was going to bring my knife, but I put it away. See, there's a rabbit. The rabbit took off. I went to enough church services for the first several years to where it's like I heard enough of those "this is your night" messages to where I stopped believing them. The problem is that what I did is I shut off expectancy in my life and didn't allow God to actually meet me. Because he had to actually make every move instead of just meet me. Because I stopped saying yes. Because I was so used to church. And it's funny, that's why you'll see brand new Christians are usually on fire. And most people that have been around church enough are like, oh, we'll just wait and see. It's almost like you're waiting for the fire to die. You put any fire in a room of damp cloth, it's going to die. I had to shift my heart. I had to have expectancy every moment of every day. Somebody be like, and I'm going to be honest. Like well, you guys will be able to tell I don't hold things back. I wouldn't be in the mood to be at church, but I had to be there because it was kind of a volunteer thing at that, whatever. You know those days that you just don't want to be at church or around people, and you know God's real and he's good, but you're okay if he misses you that day because you're just like, can I just be in a crappy mood today? Life feels horrible. I don't want to feel better. I want to mope. I've been in those moods, shown up to church and had that attitude. And then God starts doing stuff. What happened is all of a sudden I started going, I don't even know if that's really happening to them now. When I started to shut off expectancy in my own heart, I started to become judgmental on other people's lives. Like, is God really touching them? I've been to enough of these things. He didn't touch me. I doubt he's touching them too. So not only did I actually shut down my expectancy and ability to receive from God in a moment, I actually created an atmosphere and a culture around me that dampened others people. We have to be a people that come with an expectancy in our lives every moment to where I actually believe that tonight could be the most transformative night that God's ever brought in my life. I'm believing for it tonight. I'm more processing. I don't really preach, I process. I'm no better than any person in here. In fact, I'm probably worse off because I do this for a living. Since I've become a pastor, I've been more challenged to make sure that I keep my relationship with God pure and I don't do it for everybody else's sake. And it's a struggle. The weight of being a pastor is unknown until you're in the position. Because I did it as a volunteer, and it was one thing. When I actually started doing it and had the weighty responsibility that God put on me for other people's lives, I actually got lost in it and stopped actually seeing my relationship with God as clearly as it used to be. So we protect that, and I come with expectancy where I go. Even when I'm in those moods like, I'm not in the mood. Yeah, I may not be, but what if he is? And what if I miss out on it because I'm not paying attention? Did that hit anybody a little bit? It's like the guy I brought to help preach is probably getting hit harder than all of you, so it's going to be good. That was a huge rabbit trail because I got to one word and just went there. Based on this, we're going to be here till Thursday. I actually believe that there is a level of personal intimacy and breakthrough tonight in a way that's so fresh for each one of us. And it's not because where we've been with God is bad. None of us are in the fullness of what we're called to be. None of us. So none of us, I'm not saying that you're in a bad place, but I am saying where God wants us to go, he wants us to leave something we've been in and step into something new. See, God loves you enough that he loves you exactly where you are, and he loves you perfectly where you are right now. Do you believe that? It's the hardest thing for most people to believe. It's easy to say the answer because you know it's the right answer. It's hard to actually believe that God loves you exactly where you are right now. Because once we hear that, we start saying, but God, and you start recognizing all of the things in your life that you think he's judging you on. Do you realize that when you ask for forgiveness in something, it's gone? Some of you need to hear that again. When you ask for forgiveness in something, it's gone. So when you come back and say, oh, God, I did it again, he's like, did what again? I have no record of you ever doing that again before. Now, does that give us permission to like, oh, well, shoot, I can keep sinning? No, it's the opposite. It lets you know that he doesn't hold it against you, but he's given you the opportunity and ability to never walk in it again. Okay. But we all with unveiled face. How many, 2 Corinthians 3:18. Let's do this. Get your Bibles for a second. How many of you don't have Bibles with you? Okay, if you have a phone, you have a Bible. Okay, coming to church without a Bible is like going on a date without a date. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Watch it. All the introverts are like, going on a date alone is great. You know what's funny? I cannot find anywhere in my Bible where it talks about introverts. I think we sometimes use our personalities as a crutch. It happens. I used mine as a crutch for a long time, saying my boldness was why I could offend people. 2 Corinthians 3:18. There are 3 verses that God has had me in probably 100 times in the last 3 to 4 months, and this is one of them. I can't get away from it. I keep finding it, or it keeps finding me. I try to hide, and it's like, here I am. But we all, with unveiled face, beholding as in a mirror the glory of God, are being transformed into the same image from glory to glory, just as by the Spirit of the Lord. And the thing that sticks out there is the same image. Unveiled face. When we come to God with nothing hidden, it's so funny for me to think you can't hide anything from God. But yet we try. Oh, I don't want to let God know about that. How's that work? He's omnipotent, omnipresent. He was there when you did it, and he knew about it. And you're like, oh, I don't want to tell God that. Yeah. When we actually see, the part about having an unveiled face before God isn't for his sake, it's for yours. It's for you to actually say, I am not allowing myself to hide behind something. Because he sees you anyway. How many of you have kids? Okay, how many of you were ever a kid? Almost got 100% that time. Almost. A few of you are like, oh, he almost tricked me. How many of your kids have ever done that hide and seek thing where they're like, I'm going to hide. And they cover their face. And they think you can't see them now. That's most Christians. And it's cute. And I believe God's up there going, oh, that's cute. There's the other side of it, though, when the kid, they all of a sudden realize that they are now seen. That should also be Christians. We come before God with an unveiled face. We don't try to hide anything. We come with him with such transparency and purity that when we behold as in a mirror, all of a sudden we begin to see the fullness and the reflection of the Father when we come purely unhidden. Being transformed into the same image. How do people see the Father in you? You go to the Father unveiled. See, when God wanted to create fish, he spoke to the sea. When God wanted to create trees, he spoke to the earth. But when God wanted to create man, he turned into himself. Genesis 1, it says, God, let us make man in our image and our likeness. So what happens if you take a fish out of water? It dies. What happens when you take a tree out of the soil? It dies. What happens when you take man out of God? It dies. You're dead unless your life is in God. God is our natural environment, and we were created to live in his presence. How many of you get spooked out sometimes by the presence of God, the way it manifests on someone? I'm going to call liar. Thank you for being honest. I have some of the craziest manifestations. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, like I said, God doesn't do things mildly with me. Like, some people, I'm going to kind of bash on some of the Christian manifestations. Where do I go with this? Yeah, it's a big rabbit, like 8 foot. I was so judgmental when I first became a Christian because I would see somebody do something, and to me, if they weren't crying, it wasn't God. I'm like, I don't know where I got that messed up concept. It's like, if they're crying, it's holy. If they're laughing, that's distracting. That's rude. They should leave. If they're tweaking and twitching a little, yeah, that's got to be a demon. They fell down, that's fake. I remember I was at a meeting once where I was watching a ton of fake. A ton. I was so mad. It was a big tent meeting with a guy, I won't say his name, but he was throwing Holy Spirit hand grenades, which I was like, blasphemy! And he's doing this thing. And how many of you, like, even me saying that, how many of you are like, that just doesn't seem right? Yeah, it's like, that, it's not, I can't find hand grenades in the Bible. And I remember, I was so offended, because I remember him doing it and watching groups of people. There's like 700 people in a tent, watching groups of people. Nothing. Then one of them would recognize he's doing it, and then the whole group would fall out. And I'm like, I just want to go lay hands on people. Not in the best way. I just want to bring them to the Lord and just... And then I watched 3 people that I knew really well, and I knew some of these other people that were faking it. I watched 3 people that were actually standing at the back of the tent trying to get out. They were watching in a line, and he did this, and they fell, and a whole bunch of people in front of them fell, and none of them were looking. I mean, there was like, it was kind of one of those, that's not supposed to work, because that's not God. That can't work. And then my sister, my stepsister, who was there with us, and she was not a real follower of Jesus. She was there because my wife and I convinced her to go with us. And we kept telling her, you should go up and get prayer. You should go up and get prayer. She's like, no, this is fake. Yeah, but you should just go up and get prayer. That made sense. You think it's fake, so you should go get prayer. And I'm like, really, you should go get prayer? And she goes, look, if somebody else walks up and says I should get prayer, and as she's saying prayer, this little old lady, it's almost like she appeared, and she's like, hey, honey, you should go up and get prayer. And my sister looked at my wife and goes, but because she thought she did it as a joke. And my wife's like, So she goes, fine. And this is her attitude. She goes, fine. She walks up, and it was an outdoor tent meeting, and there were 3 stairs. She walks out. She's like, fine. She's standing there, and we're watching, and all of a sudden she goes, and just all the way down. It was like this, nope. And she was out for 45 minutes. Now, I already told you I was mad because I was watching a bunch of fake. And I was kind of in a dry spot. Have you guys, has anybody here ever been in a dry spot? The rest of you are liars. Just calling you out. I was in a dry spot, and I mean, for me, a dry spot was I wasn't hungry for anything. I was showing up because I was supposed to. I was doing it because I was right to do it, not because I wanted to. And so my wife and I, after seeing that, she goes, you should go get prayer. And I'm thinking, I don't want to get prayer. And I'm more like, yeah, I'll win this fight. I'm not going up to get prayer. And she goes, do you want that old lady come back? And I'm thinking, I'll go get prayer. So I walk up, and by the time I walk up, so how many of you have heard of Bill Johnson? Okay. Bill was the one preaching, and he's the one that was speaking. And now he's got literally about 40 or 50 people just spread out in a half circle from edge of the stage to edge of the stage, just piles. And he's trying to get people to come up to pray for him, and nobody can get there. Now, we're outside, outdoor tent meeting, grass, elevated stage. So I decide I'm going to walk around the side. I just climb up on the stage, walk up behind Bill, because I don't do rules well. And so I come down, and I would say the edge of the stage was probably where the edge of the stage is. So probably a good 10, 15 feet. And I remember I just tapped him on the shoulder. And I didn't know Bill at this time. I wasn't part of Bethel at this time. Tapped him on the shoulder and I said, hey. And he goes, hey. And I said, I don't know, like you to pray for me. And he goes, spit him like Jonah. Next thing I remember is turning my face and going, grass. My wife said it was the scariest thing she'd ever seen. She said it looked like a hand grenade. She said I literally, from a standing position, flew up in the air, off the stage, and landed in the grass. It looked like, and Bill, which has only happened to him 2 or 3 times, he hit the stairs. Like it was like something exploded on us. He stood up, turned around, and she said he looked confused because I was no longer there. And then he just turned and started praying for people. And she said I was out for about an hour. And when I came to, I had the most insane lack of anything remembered in that timeout. I'm saying that because most people are like, it was the greatest revelation I've ever. I had nothing. I woke up with grass in my mouth. I was actually more mad at God at that point because I'm like, he could do that, do something inside, like change me or something. I have no idea why I told that story. God will meet you when you're not ready. But is that what he has to do to get your attention, or are you coming expectant? I was so mad watching people fake it. I was so mad seeing people. To me, it felt blasphemous. And I went back to our home church, and I was talking to my pastor about it. And he said something that helped. I didn't fully agree, but I actually agree with it a lot more now. And he said, why would you judge somebody that's so hungry for what God's doing that they'll actually help him a little? And I said, because they shouldn't need to. And I said, yeah, but are you, and he said, yeah, but were you so hungry that you tried to stop him? It didn't help at the time. It helps a little more now. I don't believe that people should ever fake anything in the Lord. I just don't believe in that. But I also remember there was a guy that, how many of you have ever been to those places where people come to pray for you and they give you the Holy Spirit nudge? It's not the Holy Spirit, and it's sometimes more than a nudge. We had a speaker come through, and he was a pusher. That's what we called him. And he was a guest speaker, and he was a pusher. So after the first session, the pastor pulled him in with a few of us to have a conversation with him about you're not allowed to push. And he said, oh, well, then you don't want God to move. It's like, oh, that felt, ugh. You guys ever felt like, bleh? And he said, you're either going to trust me or I won't come back. He said, because I'm pushing if they need it. His discernment was off sometimes, but I actually remember seeing some people that I had been at church with for years. I saw him push them, and they went out. And not like it's a courtesy fall because he pushed. They were out in the Spirit, and God transformed their lives. And what he told us at the end of the conference is he's like, some people need a push. And I don't agree with that. Like, I'm not saying that to preface, well, when you come up for prayer, I'm a little foot behind. Yeah, we're not doing that. I'm not a pusher. I've actually pushed somebody before because I was in front of them and I'm like, oh gosh. It was that I'm supposed to push them. I'm against pushing God. I got past that. I now tackle people if God tells me. You're laughing. I have witnesses. So I pushed this guy, and he got healed. I smacked a woman in the face. Now I'm just seeing how much I can scare. I'm watching certain people's face. There's a few people it's like, I've got your number. I'm kind of looking at you indirectly sometimes just to see how much I can freak you out. Some of you, I'm pegging the meter a little bit. This is good. You guys want a fun story about me smacking somebody? Man, I'm on like the fourth line of 4.5 pages. Oh, well. So we're doing this conference in Nebraska, and God is just moving. I mean, just moving. In fact, that was the trip where God had this season in my life where I would pray for people to be baptized in the Holy Spirit, and I had 100% success rate. And it was just a season. I wish it had stayed because that was fun. But I mean, it was crazy enough to where I'd be walking and be like, do you speak in tongues? No, yes, you do. And they would and start speaking in tongues. Like, it was weird how it almost felt like superpowers. It was that kind of weekend where everything was working. People were getting healed. People were getting delivered. People were getting baptized in the Holy Spirit, you name it. And so we're on one of the last nights, and we have this thing. We used to do it at Bethel Redding. We do it here. Another rabbit trail on the rabbit trail. So we're in this class. In fact, you guys are having Kevin Dedman come out at some point. It's in Firestarter's class that he did. This woman came, and she had a huge tumor, cancerous tumor in her throat. And so we were gathering everybody in the class, and we were going to pray for her. But as soon as we got people near her, me and the other leader were like, we're not supposed to pray. We're supposed to laugh. We're supposed to laugh at the tumor. That sounds kind of offensive. I mean, if you wanted prayer and you're like, I'm hurting, I've got a big tumor, and people are like, ha, 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 ha. But we told her what we were going to do, and we literally laughed over her for about 8 minutes, about 20 of us. She runs over, this is disgusting, but she runs over and spits the tumor out. Goes to the doctor literally the next day, Monday, and she's cancer-free. I can't find that in here. But I saw it, and she's still healed to this day. In fact, we just got a report from her about 1.5 years ago, so this is about 9 years now. 1.5 years ago that she is still completely cancer-free. So, sidetrack. So, laughing at a disease or something isn't like abnormal for us now. We've kind of done that a few times. So we're in this prayer line, big conference, things are going amazing, and we have them lined up, and I'm literally like, oh, I feel this. I have to have them dance and laugh. So I walk up and I see this little boy. I'm like, what are you here for? He tells me his injury, and I said, start laughing and dancing. So he starts laughing and dancing. Step over to the next person. It's this older woman. She's barely able to talk, and I said, what are you here for? And she goes, what did she say her problem was? Because it was something, oh, yeah, she points like this, and I can literally see it's like a half of a softball sticking out of, like, pushing her shirt out. And she lifts it up, and she has a tumor, huge tumor on the side. And I'm like, okay, I want you to grab it, I want you to laugh, and the look she gave me was like, oh, you want to kill me right now. I mean, she did not think that was appropriate to laugh or dance holding her tumor. So I'm like, okay, wait here. Next person. What's going on? I forgot what it was. Those are the two I remember. Forgot what it was. Laugh and dance. They got healed. You ready? No. Go to the next person, and it's another kid. What are you here for? Then they laugh. They get healed. I'm like, so I have healing, anger, healing, healing. Healing, anger, healing, healing. Oh, you three dance around her. Let's make her angrier. So they start dancing around her, and she is just not okay. Like, yeah. I think the tumor was the worst or the easiest part of her problems. She needed something inside changed because she had become so bitter that she wasn't allowing herself to actually enter into joy. And I'm like, okay, all right, kids. I go down to the next person. And then I'm like, oh, now I feel bad. Like, I've offended the lady. Yes. That way it actually was more of my body reacted, and then I was like, oh. So I walk over to tell her, I'm really sorry. I go, ma'am, wham! And I mean, I've been a martial artist for 30 years. I don't hit softly. And I saw her go up and down on her back. And I remember, I think if we could replay it in slow motion, it was like, what? And I literally did not know what happened in the moment. And she hits the ground, and she's immediately sitting up, and she starts cussing. And she gets up on her knees, and she stands up, and she's like, you son. And she starts weeping. I'm like, I'm scared now. Like, anger, I understand. Crying is scaring me. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, your face hurts, I know, but what's going on? She starts weeping because the reason she wasn't answering me before is her jaw was sewn together with wires because she had a broken jaw. She couldn't talk. She could mumble. When I hit her, she got 100% healed and the wires were gone. She got medical proof later. The wires were completely gone. So I'm like, we need to dance. And she goes, okay. And she starts dancing. And all of a sudden I go, check your tumor. And the tumor was gone. That was a fun rabbit trail. So, yeah, I've pushed people. I've tackled people. I've smacked people. I've jumped off stages. I've thrown people off stages. Who's ready for ministry time? Two crazy people. I like this. All right. I like to have fun with these things, but the reality is, what are you expecting and what are you willing to do if God says go? How much are you willing to let go of who you are and what you believe to actually step into the offer that God's putting before you? Do I think that everybody's called to that crazy of a lifestyle? No. How many of you ever heard of Smith Wigglesworth? Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine what went through his mind the first time he hit someone or kicked a baby. Drop kicked a baby. Like that's, yeah. I remember once I prayed, oh God, give me that type of courage. And then I hit someone, I'm like, God, take that away. But if that's what God calls me to, I'd do it. And I'm not bragging on this. I'm humble enough to say I was wrong. Like if I ever do something and it's not it wasn't the Lord, I'll be the first to repent. I have no pride when it comes to God. I'm following him with everything I have, and I will do whatever I feel he's telling me to do, and I'm submitted. First time I tackled somebody was at a conference, 3 rows of 50 people, and at Bethel they used to do these things where they'd line a bunch of people up and they'd do this prayer thing where somebody just walk by and pray, and you'd see some people fall down, some would get hit, some would just stand there thinking we're weird. It's fine. So I'm standing talking to Joaquin, who's the senior pastor of Bethel now, Bethel Austin, and he and I are talking probably about 20 feet from the first row. There's a second row and third row. Our friend of ours, he starts going down the line praying for people. As he turns coming down the second row, I'm looking like, I have to tackle him. And I've never done anything like this yet. I mean, this is before the slap, before any crazy things. I had never done anything like this. I'm thinking, I have to tackle him. Like, oh no, I have to tackle. Like, you know, have you ever felt that God thing to where it's like, not like, oh, you should. It's like, if I don't do this, I might explode. I'm like, I have to tackle. And I look at Joaquin, I'm like, I'm supposed to tackle him. And I said his name, and he goes, and he knows me well, and if he looks at me and he goes, go. Well, it wasn't like let's get. He said, go. I just start running. And like, I'm short, but I'm not small. And he turns the row, and I'm now in the air. And I hit him, he hit the first person, and all 50 people fell out in the spirit. Like all of them, the whole line just fell out. And it wasn't dominoes, they just all fell out. I have no idea why God had me do that. But he knows that if he tells me to, I will. Because if that hadn't have been God, I probably wouldn't have been at that church very long. The woman that I slapped, I've been back to that church multiple times over the years. In fact, that woman, the following year, we came back for a conference, and she goes, I don't need healing. Made my heart so happy, because I'm thinking, this could go a lot of ways. But she remembered the good part of it. All right. You guys okay? We're going late. Okay, I'm going to need to hurry, because there's no way I'm getting like, I'm still scrolling, and there's the end. Not getting to all this tonight. All right, God, what am I supposed to hit? Wrong choice of words, maybe? I didn't even notice it until you said that. That was awesome. What am I supposed to hit? All right. 2 Chronicles 7:14. This is the other verse, and it's one of my favorite verses. It actually was a verse that when COVID first hit and the world started to go crazy, and a whole bunch of preachers started using this verse incorrectly. That's when God first started really bringing me to this verse. 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face. I'm going to stop there. It is prideful if you don't pray and you don't seek his face. You are walking in pride if you don't go to the Lord. Because what you've done is you've decided that you are able to do what he's there for. You've put yourself in his God spot. The face of God is what we are invited to seek after. And it's funny, if you think about that, the Bible has clearly cautioned us that anybody that sees his face will die. But that's what he's offering us, is to see his face. Thanks for the invite, God. Come look at me, you'll die. But I tell you what, every time you come before the face of God, something dies that should not have been alive. He invites us into the ongoing interaction with the countenance of a perfect Father. So when it says, seek my face, he's inviting us into a place of intimacy. I'm going to skip to a couple of things. There's a couple of things I do want to hit tonight. I don't know how soon we have to get out of here. Do we have a stop time? 3:30, 4 a.m.? Oh, girls with the kids? Oh, shoot, we're good. You guys are fine. I've taught my kids well. There's something about prophetic timing How many of you have ever had a prophetic word given to you? Okay. How many of you have not had it, or it may have been a prophetic word, or you just knew God was speaking to you, that there was a promise put before you, that God has done something in your life to where you knew he had a plan and it hasn't happened? Okay. One of the challenges is that when we sometimes don't see the promises of God fulfilled in our lives, we actually think he's not there. We begin to associate the timing of the Lord with the presence of the Lord. And we think, well, I must be doing something wrong, or somebody got it wrong, or, and we actually shift a lot of the blame towards God, or saying, well, God's just not here now. I've done something to offend him and he's far, or he's just not involved. See, we're not waiting for God to show up because he's never left. So don't ever confuse his presence with his timing. Sometimes God is more interested in the work he's doing in us rather than the work he's doing through us. And the challenge is what if sometimes you're in this place with God where he's got you someplace and you're looking elsewhere thinking you're supposed to be there? Psalm 91 says, he shall cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you shall take refuge. I feel like sometimes as Christians, we're sitting under the wings of God in his refuge, trying to peek through the feathers, going, what else is out there? But God, you said. See, sometimes it's the process. It's understanding where you are and not seeking to go someplace he's not. Moses said, I will not go anywhere without your presence. See, the problem with Christians sometimes in timing is we rush ahead, we get there and go, hey, God, where are you? And he's like, well, I'm on my way, but you're there way outside of my timing. And now you're outside of my wings. So by the time I get there, you may have experienced some things that you weren't supposed to because you're outside of my timing. And it's funny, sometimes we get stuck in a place. How many of you ever had a promise of God and then you feel like you get stuck? Like God says, you're going to do this, and all of a sudden you're like, I can't move. I feel like I'm completely incapacitated. See, a lot of times you think you're being buried when really you're being planted. And God's probably using this season to grow something inside of you. See, he's only going to lead you into a wilderness to obtain what you need to enter the promised land on the other side. Philippians 4 says, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. A good indicator on if you're in the timing of God is, do you have peace? And it's not the peace that makes sense. That's the problem, is sometimes we're like, I just don't feel peace. Well, you're probably trying to rate peace off of a natural carnal measurement instead of a peace which surpasses understanding. So when things don't make sense, but you're like, yeah, I'm good, you're probably in God's timing. One of the challenges with a prophetic culture is that it's a prophetic culture and sometimes becomes a pathetic culture. Because there's nothing wrong with prophetic cultures, but when the atmosphere becomes so tangibly evident with people speaking on what they think God is saying, and people aren't receiving by weighing the word or going to counsel to make sure that they feel that it's the right word, if you're outside of that, every word that comes at you starts to throw you around, and you get really confused. Sorry, just got happy for a minute. Take a happy break. You guys good for another 15 minutes? I'm lying. It's going to go longer, but I figured if you give me 15, I can stretch out 30. God, you got so much. All right. Heading into this weekend, I feel like this is the last thing I really want to hit on. Our imagination. Let me just go here. Matthew 6, Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Close your eyes for a minute. Picture this. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. See, we need to start imagining what that really looks like. You can open your eyes. Our imagination is probably one of the biggest targets of the enemy. And it's gotten a bad rap. And I'm going to speak to the parents for a minute. Don't you dare try to stifle your kids' imagination. And when they begin to tell you that they're seeing things in the heavenlies, don't turn it into a negative connotation to imagination. I've watched parents with really good intentions being like, oh, you have such a good imagination. It's like you're downplaying that they may have actually encountered heaven and seen God and labeled it imagination, and then they go out and they hear that imagination is a made-up thing. Eric Johnson, Bill's son, says one of the enemy's goals is to get you to stop imagining. If he can get you to stop imagining, he can leave you alone. If you let the enemy into your heart or mind and you stop dreaming of a day, you stop imagining what it could be. If he can get you to dial down or kill that thing in you, then you'll stay in the same cycle of life. We're not designed to stay in the same place. We're designed to move forward into something that isn't but can be. Your imagination takes you there. I don't care what time or what verse it is. When you close your eyes and you read, or somebody reads the word, your mind does something with it. Your imagination is active. See, a lot of people think because the enemy, he's the thought caster, they think, oh, well, the imagination is bad. It's bad. And the Bible has a lot of verses against the imagination, but it's warnings, not saying it's bad, it's saying what it could be. But the imagination isn't the devil's playground. It's the canvas on which God creates. The actual definition of imagination: the act or power of forming a mental image out of something not present to the senses or never before wholly perceived in reality. A creative ability and the ability to confront and deal with a problem. It sounds like God to me. It's remarkable, the gift that God has given us. Your imagination is what makes you feel alive. You've imagined something that isn't yet, and you wake up excited because today is one day closer to what your imagination has put there. There are some just heroes in the faith, or just very smart, intelligent people that have revelation, and a lot of them have had quotes or mentioned the imagination. Bill Johnson says, one of the side effects of losing intimacy with God is that at some point we stop doing ministry out of imagination and we begin to do it out of memory. Graham Cook says, "Beloved, you need a good imagination to get a hold of who God really is and what God is really like. Logic is never going to cut it." Dutch Sheets says, "Dreaming ignites creativity. The impossible is powerless against the relentless energy and creative imagination flowing from a dreaming heart." And let's take one that's not necessarily a known Christian leader. Albert Einstein said, "Logic will get you from A to B. Imagination will take you everywhere." Imagination is everything. It is the preview of life's coming attractions. People are afraid when it comes to the prophetic of getting it wrong. How many of you are afraid of getting it wrong? I'll raise my hand. Doesn't feel good to get it wrong. Two things that'll help you in the prophetic when it comes to that. Don't "thus saith the Lord" someone. And when you do get it wrong, because you probably will, be repentant. Be humble. Even if you think you were right. Even if you were right. Let me qualify that last one. You may give a word to somebody that they don't receive. It doesn't come to pass. They get hurt and offended, and it affects other people because they feel you've hurt them and the people that they know have been hurt. There's nothing wrong with being humble and saying, "Please forgive me. I was given the word that I thought I heard, and I'm sorry." I lost nothing by doing that. I've had it happen to where I've done that twice in the last 24 years, and people have come back to me sometimes years later and been like, the first time, person came back and said, "I was so scared when you gave me that word, and I was offended because you gave it to me in front of people." And I was immature at that time. I did not give the word very well. I gave it as more of a, "You're doing bad and you need to do better, and this is what God's saying." It's never the way to do it. Not publicly. If you have a relationship with someone and you have that voice, you can. But I didn't do it well. 2 years later, they came back and said, "You were right, and it's come to pass, but you hurt me when you did it." And I repented. And then another time, somebody just came back a few years later and said, "Wow, we thought you were wrong. Like everything was pointing a different direction. And you were right." I had repented for those, though. I think that's why they were able to come back and tell me, because I was repentant. And I think I shared this the last time I was here. Recently, prophesied over a young woman in our church. And there are certain rules, and I say rules because they're not really rules. They're just things to be aware of. We try not to ever do names, dates, and babies. We try not to do very specific things like that, or at least saying them as this is going to happen. But people that know me know I probably bend that rule more than most, just because I usually don't say something unless I'm pretty confident that I'm hearing God. And I prophesied over this young woman a date range with a young man. Not a specific young man, just said something, "You're going to have a man come into your life in this range." Funny thing was my wife, separately, not knowing I gave her that word, gave her almost the exact word like 2 weeks later. That time came, that time passed, nothing happened. She didn't tell us for almost 7 months that she was really hurt and offended. And she came, set up a meeting. Well, she actually told the young adult pastors of the church that she was hurt and offended. They told me, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, have her come in, please." And she was afraid to come in because every experience she'd ever had with that type of scenario was person telling, "Well, you must have done something to change the word." Well, maybe it's just because of this or that. They went all around explaining why it probably didn't happen. She had no idea what she would get from us. She came in, sat down, and I don't know why, I broke. I started weeping, and I'm like, "Please forgive me. I would never try to say something that would hurt you, and I was wrong. Like, I firmly believe that the word I gave her was right, but it didn't happen. So I was wrong. Not, oh, I missed the timing. I didn't try to justify it. Well, maybe the timing's off. I didn't try to do that. I was wrong. And I told her, I was wrong. Please forgive me. And my wife, same thing. We are so sorry. We were wrong in giving you that word. It healed years of hurt in her because she actually saw the prophetic exercised in the way it should, with humility. I don't need my words to be right. I don't need to give words. I'm not looking for anything in them. But when I hear God speak, I want people to hear his voice. And sometimes, most of the time, you're going to hear God's voice through this. And outside of this, you're probably going to hear it through someone else. Not a lot of people hear God's voice to themselves. They hear an inner voice, but an audible voice, things like that. You're probably going to get a prophetic word or a word from someone to give you direction, correction, or some sort of idea of what's going on in your life. When it's given to you in humility, and it's not given to you as a commandment, it's received. Now, are there prophets, true prophets, that actually can speak in that way? Yes, there are. The odds of there being a true prophet in this room is probably unlikely. They're not common. Every one of you can and should prophesy. Not just can, should. Every one of you should prophesy. If you don't believe me, read Paul. Or read what Paul says about it. We should all prophesy. But the authority and the office of the prophet is very different. Just a very simple summary of it. People that prophesy what God's saying. Prophets prophesy and God answers. If you read about Old Testament prophets, they would say something and God would answer their words. People that prophesy what he's saying or doing. It's a simple definition. All right, why don't you guys stand up? Whether you're going to be here for the rest of this weekend or not, I want to pray this over us. You can put your hand on your heart, your head, your neighbor's wallet, whatever you need. I'm just kidding. Whatever you want to put your hand. Father, I pray that there is a fresh and new awe and wonder here for you that captivates all of our senses and joins it with the supernatural. And over you guys, I pray that all the prophetic promises over your life, over your families, over this church and over this city are yes and amen. I pray that you have the constant ability to taste and see that God is so amazingly, abundantly, and just ridiculously good in your life. I pray that there's a divine increase of presence-filled encounters coming that mark you in a way that you can't unsee it. You can't unhear it, you can't unfeel it, you can't unknow it, and you definitely can't undo it. A blessing that remains. And I pray that your imagination is God's masterpiece, that it stirs up childlike faith, that it awakens the wonders and awe in your heart, and that it invites you into the mystery and revelation that reveals the Father's love. And I bless you to receive everything that God has for you these next few days, but to become so aware of his goodness and his presence that you don't just come to church and leave, that you come to God and encounter him. In Jesus' name, amen.